Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Saṅghaṃ Namasami. At Cittaviveka, we're coming towards the last week or so of our period called a 3-month retreat. So it's really a time for resetting how we are on the Eightfold Path. I was going back to taking the bits apart and getting into details of right view, right action, right speech. You know, the core of it, which is really how the heart and mind operate. So it's whole life path. So, you know, when we're, say, having a retreat, it doesn't seem like we're doing a whole life thing. There's not a lot of, you know, it's very stripped down. There's livelihood to the extent in which people go for alms food, and working in the monastery still goes on, chores, tidying and so forth. Speech happens, it's minimal, it's not frozen silence, it's minimal, but it's there. Yeah. So we're kind of taking everything down to a kind of fairly quiet level in order to contemplate more deeply the actions and intentions, the effects we have on others, the effects the world has on us. Because this is the essence of the path. It's very much a holistic paradigm. Covers everything. The idea is, even though it's presented in 8 aspects, it's one attempt to just get a sense of a whole coverage. It's also internal and external. It's another repeated refrain. One cultivates internally and externally. It's for one's own welfare, of the welfare of others. It's the way the Buddha called it, practice. It involves community. Internal, external, involves monastics and lay people. So you've got this sense of every time you can create one thing, it's always balanced by something else. That sense of trying to cover all the ways in which we can construct experience. Say there's this, but then that, there's silence, but there's also speech. There's action, but there's also stillness. There's monasteries, but monasteries can't exist without lay people. So you've got to cover it all. And this means that the tendency to cling internally to getting very self-concerned about one's mind or heart without taking a broader picture in view, that you kind of just beginning to get a handle on that, how we can get very self-obsessive and self-important. One of the pitfalls of meditation is to get engrossed, self-engrossed with one's personal issues, in a way that's not very helpful, because we tend to brood, and proliferate. To the extent in which one's kind of builds up a profile of the inner person. That becomes the main aim, is to get the inner person enlightened. But there's no inner person. There's an inner domain, an inner territory, we call that an internal, it's called the realm of Chitta, it's the obvious aspect of it, the heart. There's an external domain, which is our sense consciousness, including the thinking mind. That's the external. But we're not external nor internal. We're aware of both of those fields, both those domains, and the interaction between two, and the balancing. Otherwise clinging starts to occur. Worldly person clings to the external, their golf, their money, houses, their news, sport, so forth. Mystics tend to cling internally. They're very caught up in refined states or trying to get refined states. And the Buddha was obviously very aware of both of these extremes. So he taught the path. And then he created his big, he said his life work wasn't finished until he'd established the fourfold assembly. Both, gone forth people and lay people operating together. So you see that sense of which is a very holistic presentation, and trying to honour that. And see, actually this is how it works. Otherwise I get engrossed in myself, or I get engrossed in building projects, and just trying to find out where does these two, and the balance is always, well, externally or internally, the aim is to look towards, generate, sustain skillful states. Because if you sustain skillful states, the boundaries between those are, there's no division. So if you're doing something skillfully externally, looking after the place, then the heart will be happy, there's a sense of patience and conscientiousness, there's an internal reward. The Buddha commented, in looking after others, you look after yourself. How is that? Because if you cultivate loving kindness, patience, harmlessness and sympathy in looking after others, you immediately get the rewards of that yourself. Because your heart becomes stronger, brighter, more empathic, less obsessive, more tolerant. So, external, internal are supposed to meet and fortify and bring into fruition skillful states. And those skillful states then are something the heart can linger in and abide in and release itself from sorrow, grief, agitation, restlessness, bitterness, and so forth. That's the way it goes. That's the way the Buddha taught it anyway. It also means it's very much a living thing. When we look in the establishments of sati, of mindfulness, the Buddha says you cultivate mindfulness of body, walking, standing, leaning, scratching, defecating, chewing. It's not that kind of subtle. Cultivate mindfulness of body externally, which means you're aware of the body in terms of what affects it, what comes to it, through consciousness, sights, sounds, touches. You cultivate mindfulness of the body internally, what arises through it, warmth, mobility, fluidity, solidities, these experiences we have when you cultivate, you begin to sense your body as not just a lump of meat, but actually something that's got a life force. It tenses up, it relaxes, it brightens, it soothes, it steadies, and it keeps you balanced. So the internal body, in this sense, is not an anatomical exercise, but a contemplative reference to a place, to an area, an internal area where we can get very firmly grounded, and how necessary that is in order to counterbalance the effects of what comes at us, which is called consciousness. Consciousness throws, it says consciousness is likened to being stabbed with 100 spears. Sight, sounds, touches, thoughts, and even mind, mano, Mano, mind, is also the primary thrower of spears, thoughts, impressions, and also what our mental attention brings in. So because of this kind of interplay, I use two words, just as the Pali uses two words, mano and citta. I use two words, mind and heart. Mind throws things at you, and heart receives it. So mind sometimes scolds you, sometimes criticizes you, sometimes chats at you. Mind is a sense organ. It's an aspect of consciousness. It means it's external and it throws things at you, dumps things into you. Heart is internal. Things well up. You feel angry, you feel upset, you feel joyful, you feel fascinated. You get this kind of inner welling up. And that's citta. So then learning to really get a sense of how these two interplay. Consciousness throws in, citta throws things out. It's like consciousness drops rocks on the pond, citta splashes and ripples. And of course, if we put beautiful things into it, then joy, calm, love, compassion start to well up. That's cultivation. And so, so that's going to be possible. When's it not possible? Because when you have a mind, you have attention, which is the primary quality of mind. It's called manasikara, mind at work. It means it focuses on things. Oh, that's called attention. Oh, what's that? And then it brings that into the heart. You go, oh, that's interesting, that's nice. And the heart responds with volition. Oh, I want one of those. And really this is so important because there's a lot of attention-grabbing stuff out there. And mostly the stuff that grabs your attention is something you've got to actually restrain, filter out. Because it's there to grab you. Right? Do you want to be grabbed? You try and find even a packet of sugar or flour which is not covered with slogans and humorous statements or added, kinds of things, how great it is. Well, if it's so good, why do we need to advertise it? Couldn't it just be a bag of sugar? Why does it have to be round and rare, organic, biodegradable? What's the packaging about? Most of what we are offered is packaging. Same old ingredients, just different packages. Like clothes. Basically, clothes are pretty much a standard thing. A couple of sleeves, couple of legs, things wrapped around your body. That's it. You've got 2 arms, 2 legs, and a bit in between. You've got to cover it all. So, and yet, there are different ways you can do this bandaging. Different cuts and dimensions and flares and flounces and trims and pleats and it's all packaging, isn't it? So it's there to because then it'll grab the eye. And the eye gets grabbed. Oh, that looks nice. And you get excited. So, so if you're cultivating, you're realizing how crucial this manasikara is, attention, and how so much grabs it. You replace what's called that with yoniso manasikara. Yoniso manasikara means careful attention, or wise attention, or attention that really, deepens into the heart. So how's this? How good is this? How useful is this? How helpful is this? How does it affect you? If you're just getting excited and agitated, is that really a skillful state? It might be sobering. It might be that which causes one to feel a sense of, there's a lot of problems around here. I'm not ignoring the world, but I've really got to be very clear and firm about my ethics, or just getting angry and upset and ranting, which people do incessantly, it seems, on social media, like wow. You just rant, and lie. And putting that out, and people put that out and they pick it up, and people rant back. You got a kind of rantosphere, and a skillful state. What's going on? It's just blind reaction and crazy intentions of no responsibility, no real responsibility for how this is going to affect others. This is stupid attention and stupid intention. There's no responsibility. But if we really contemplate how we are internal and external. Everything that's happening externally is sooner or later is going to affect this body. Everything's being said, every kind of attitude and ideology that's being promulgated I'm going to have to deal with that. And everything that I kind of stand for and put out, that's going to have its effects too. You can't separate. So you take responsibility. This is where it stops. This is where the ranting stops. This is where the blaming others stops, because it's of no use. You cultivate, because it's very easy to do this. You don't really cultivate, really watch and get attentive to how things happening to you spark off these reactions and responses. You can get you can really get led astray. If you're not clear about what's happening within you, what your citta's doing. It's getting mesmerized. Because if it's true and good, it should be that it rises up through you. You can bring it out, and it will do no harm. If it's good and skillful, you can bring it out, it will be a source of benefit. If it's just weird, no use. So it's very straight. It's not esoteric. In that respect. But it requires deep attention. And this is the way that the manas and the citta work together. You could call it head and heart, if you like it, to put it like that. And you need them both. Because, internally there's confusion and unskillfulness and ignorance, as well as beautiful things. So we need that sense of careful filtering. And how do you filter it? Because the Buddha said, well, greed is fairly easy to see, hatred is fairly easy to see. The really difficult one, very difficult, is delusion. Because delusion is what you don't really, it fogs you, it blinds you, it hoodwinks you. So with delusion, what you have to do is examine, keep casting light on it, keep bringing it out and saying, does this work? Do others do this? How does this affect others? What if everybody else went this way? You kind of start questioning, examining, probing. So even the most, kind of refined levels of the Buddhist samadhi, manifestations are joy, happiness, mindfulness, equanimity. They're not going to do anybody any harm. And they're radiating through the body. So it says there's not one part of the entire body that's not saturated with the happiness of this experience. So there's no break, there's no division, everything's included. Your body, your mind, your heart, and the effects of the cultivation are manifest. And people would say this is what we find with these samanas, Here you see they kind of been sleeping on the ground, they get up, they've got no food, and they've got these rags, but you look at them, they're serene and bright. The radiance comes through their bodies. You can see it. This is the real thing. This is not just somebody stuck in their head. It's actually walking around. So this yoni somanisakara is considered extremely important. Deep attention, careful reflection. Even the great forest masters, like ones we know, Ajahn Mahabua, Ajahn Chah, could have very strong samadhi, and yet they'd say, yeah, that's good, but I think Ajahn Mahabua said even the mindfulness and concentration can act like a kind of unconscious blanket. You don't really realise, you're not doing it deliberately, it just tends to muffle things. So you have to take it off and just do walking up and down, constantly inquiring, looking in. Even turning the inquiry into what is it that knows, and beginning to probe, is some kind of attachment here. Winkling it out through careful reflection. And the Buddha himself said, through this deep attention I began to understand this is where suffering arises, this is where it ceases. So it's really a vehicle for awakening. Primary thing that continues from, day one onwards, never to be put aside. The single most useful factor is that. Because this is what tells you what to be mindful of. Mindfulness is obviously a big buzzword, and rightly so. And yet, mindfulness means you place attention on something and you sense it, you're aware of it. You stay with it. So what tells you what your mindfulness on? That's called deep attention. So don't be mindful of that, place it there, because this is where skillful states will arise, fruitful states. So this is our responsibility in a way, to keep cultivating. You're noticing things we tend to, just get over this. I notice in terms of attention how ragged it can get. Some things you give a lot of attention to, some things you just kind of skip over that, get on to the next thing. What's happening there? It doesn't matter what's happening in a way, but what you don't want is the blur. I mean, if you're doing something quickly, you're doing it quickly, but you know why you're doing it quickly. It's what I find. I check myself when I'm doing things not just in a blurred way, like I don't really know what I'm doing actually, I'm just doing something habitually. What's happening? It's not harmful, it's just blurred, it's ignorant. So that doesn't require one to go super slowly either. It's just that you're attending, you know the motivation, you know the results, you know there's a sense of purpose, however small that may be. This is cleaner, clearer, tidier, more helpful, more courteous, more supportive. I'll do that. You're looking for those, those opportunities to where's generosity possible, where's goodwill possible, and skillful states. And what brings everyone together. So Yoniso-manasikara is is matched or married to another important factor, Kalyanamitta, spiritual friendship. And the Buddha says, well, for deep progress, or you have to have the four establishments: hearing the Dhamma, true Dhamma, having Kalyanamitta, spiritual friends, admirable friends, having your own deep attention, and therefore being able to practice in accordance with Dhamma. These are the four features. You hear it, where do you hear it from? You hear it from spiritual friends. Okay. What do you do with that? You take it internally. Oh, okay, let's look at this. Check that out. That's Yoniso-manasikara. Is it right? Is it wrong? Has she got it there? What's she doing? How does that work? I don't get it. You chew it over, you figure it out. That's what it is. And till it rings in your heart, and you get it. And then you do practice it. Practice the Dhamma. So it hasn't really been able to be practiced until it's gone through that kind of process. It's got to be, ideally, not just read, but seen and expressed by another living being. Because ideas are easy. But living beings are much richer, more nuanced, and more effective than ideas. Ideas just go to your head. Nice ones, inspiring maybe, but when you Kalyanamitta, an idea can't actually listen to you. But a spiritual friend can. You can ask a teacher, how's that? What's this? You can't do that with an idea. So this sense in which you can get much more involved and integrated is another aspect of why this teaching is holistic. It's lived. It's internal meets the external, and there's a dialogue. We inquire. And this is really makes the human life so precious. Because the human being who's pursuing skillful states, they may not have them all, but they've got some. And they don't just think they're actually living it. That is a treasure. Because you can see that, hear that, witness what she or he does or doesn't do. You take it in and they don't do that. Oh yeah. I hadn't really noticed that myself. And so this is such a rich living library that that we can inherit and be part of. We can all be books in it. And that's how it's properly established. And a Kalyanamitta possibility means that the other aspect of human beings, the fact is that if these bodies break up, we die. And we also leave, we go to different places. So in terms of just the sense consciousness, it's a bit fragile. However, one could be affectionate and delight in good company. It does still have that recognition, this is going to pass. But if you take it internally, then what we give to each other is the memory and the example, and that lingers. That lingers. That person's parami, that person's skillfulness, that person's truthfulness or resolution or commitment stays in me, becomes part of me. Chitta is not separate, it just takes in, absorbs qualities, whether external or internal, it takes them in and absorbs them. When you take and absorb good qualities, the chitta becomes very healthy and strong. And the goodness that others have shown us, presented, become embedded. So in some ways we're all each other's fathers and mothers. We're all kind of breeding, co-breeding good qualities, because they don't belong to anybody in particular. They don't copyright, They're the beauty of the human being, and then we can absorb them from others and become internalized, and then we live them through our forms, our words, our actions, our styles, our districts, and that's the way this process of the fruitful humanity becomes a force of goodness and blessing in the world. And obviously the opposite is true too. Human beings easily get infected by mass ideologies, hysteria, fashions, phobias, prejudices. The sickness of human beings is contagious too. So our responsibility, is just seeing when we've been infected, looking inwardly. Blind spots, or even the kind of elements of, resentment, or bitterness, or anger, or regret. What's that? Bring it out. What does it need? What's needed here? Wise reflection, deep reflection. This is not skillful. This is something to clean with kindness, resolution, understanding, patience. Clean it. Then your heart will be a treasure and a source of blessings for yourself and others. In this way, it's not esoteric, nor is it a kind of some sort of savage dismissal of the world, which sometimes people typify practice, No, it's not. The Buddha didn't do it. It's just that through, the experience of deep attention, careful attention, practicing according to Dhamma, the heart is purified and cleansed of heedlessness, impatience, judgmental, harshness, obsessiveness, me, cleaned of all that. And this way it's called liberation. Because when those defects are cleaned, removed, the heart is not held in anything external or internal. The internal external paradigm begins to melt. It's just wholeness, being, with no reactions and grasping. But you look very, step back your day, when you consider what your life is about. There's parents, there's friends, there's jobs, there's things you've done wrong, things you've done right, things you haven't finished, things you like to do, things you don't want to be part of. It's all there, isn't it? Look at all that, and you kind of begin to contemplate underneath these events the themes of carelessness or clarity, and you begin to see in what your life story is playing out, the seeds and the results of skillful and unskillful mind states. And then you lesson learned, something to be learned here. Not lingered in, learned. Move on. Don't own the past. Move past, move out of it. Don't own the future. Let it happen. Don't own the present. You don't need to. This release from clinging is called the deathless. So in our retreat time, there's obviously times when we're on our own, times we're in the group, times when we have recollections and teachings, sometimes it's silent, sometimes we're chopping wood, cooking, cleaning the house. In a way, it's not what you think. It's much more multifaceted, because that's how life is, and that's how practice is. Anyone?
Now let us chant the verses on the highest blessings. Thus have I heard that the Blessed One was staying at Savatthi, residing at the Chithurst Grove, in Anathapindika's park, Then in the dark of the night, a radiant Deva illuminated all Jeta's grove. She bowed down low before the Blessed One. Then standing to one side, she said, Devas are concerned for happiness and ever long for peace. The same is true for humankind. What then are the highest blessings? Avoiding those of foolish ways, associating with the wise, and honoring those worthy of honor. These are the highest blessings. Living in places of suitable kinds, with the fruits of past good deeds, and guided by the rightful way. These are the highest blessings. Accomplished in learning and craftsman skills, with discipline highly trained, and speech that is true and pleasant to hear. These are the highest blessings. Providing for mother and father's support, and cherishing family, and ways of work that harm no being. These are the highest blessings. Generosity and a righteous life, offering help to relatives and kin, and acting in ways that leave no blame. These are the highest blessings. Steadfast in restraint, and shunning evil ways, avoiding intoxicants that dull the mind, and heedfulness in all things that arise. These are the highest blessings. Respectfulness and being of humble ways, contentment and gratitude, and hearing the Dhamma frequently taught. These are the highest blessings. Patience and willingness to accept one's faults, seeing venerated seekers of the truth, and sharing often the words of Dhamma. These are the highest blessings. Ardent committed to the holy life, seeing for oneself the noble truths, and the realization of Nibbana. These are the highest blessings. Although in contact with the world, unshaken the mind remains, beyond all sorrow, spotless, secure. These are the highest blessings. They who live by following this path know victory wherever they go, and every place for them is safe. These are the highest blessings. Do the closing homage in Pali and English. That's on page 16 in the dark brown book. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava, the Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed One, Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. being so completely explained by him. Dhammang namasami, I bow to the Dhamma. Supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka saṅgho. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, Sanghang namami, I bow to the Sangha.